Most people don't know that the full name of the Statue of Liberty is the Statue of Liberty Enlightening the World. She is a symbol of freedom, especially for many immigrants. When many immigrants came to the United States in the late 1800s, Lady Liberty in New York Harbor was a sign to tell them that they had made it to America. Inside the base of the statue, there is a plaque with a famous poem written on it. The poem is The New Colossus by Emma Lazarus. Many immigrants feel this poem speaks to them the reasons they came to America. One line of the poem is, "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free." Lady Liberty was not always green. She used to be copper-colored, but the years have caused the copper that the statue is made of to change color. The 151-foot-tall sculpture was a 100th birthday gift from France to the United States in 1886. It is located on Liberty Island right off the southern tip of Manhattan, New York City. The only way to get there is to take a ferry. Inside the base of the statue is a museum. To get to the crown, people have to climb 377 steps up a double spiral staircase from the feet of the statue. There is no elevator. People need to be in good shape to climb to the top. People used to be able to climb up to the torch of the statue, but it was shut down because it was too easy to fall off. About 4 million people visit the Statue of Liberty every year. People who can't go to New York can see replicas in Las Vegas and other parts of the world. Rockefeller Center is a complex of 19 buildings. It is named for a famous New York City business magnate, John D. Rockefeller, who built the group of buildings from 1930 to 1939. The most famous building in the complex is the General Electric Building, where NBC television studios are based. It is smack in the middle of Manhattan, New York City, between 5th and 6th Avenues and between 48th and 51st Streets. The address of the GE building is 30 Rockefeller Plaza. That's how the show 30 Rock got its name. The show was filmed there. Saturday Night Live, a popular American late-night show, is also filmed there. Visitors can get tickets to see a show being taped and can also tour the studios. Visitors to Rockefeller Center can visit the plaza, which becomes an ice skating rink in the winter. Every year, a huge Christmas tree is placed there, and thousands of people attend the tree lighting ceremony, which always features famous singers. In the spring, summer, and fall, the plaza becomes a cafe. In the middle of the plaza is a statue of the Greek god Prometheus. His myth states that he brought fire to the world. 200 flags from all countries of the United Nations surround the plaza. Radio City Music Hall is another famous building in Rockefeller Center. Many musicians give concerts here, but it is best known as the home of the Rockettes, a dance company named for Rockefeller Center. They are famous for their kick lines and are best known for performing in the Radio City Christmas Spectacular, an annual musical holiday stage show. Manhattan is a small island that is one part of New York City. New York City, the Big Apple, is actually made up of 5 sections called boroughs. These boroughs are Manhattan, Queens, Brooklyn, Staten Island, and the Bronx. Manhattan has the most people of all the boroughs, about 1.5 million, even though it is the smallest borough by size. If you send a letter to someone who lives on Manhattan, don't write Manhattan on the envelope. You should write New York, New York, like the famous Frank Sinatra song. Because the island is so small, most people live and work in tall buildings. Some of these buildings are called skyscrapers because it looks like they are touching the sky. Some famous skyscrapers in Manhattan are Empire State Building, Chrysler Building, 70 Pine Street, Trump Building, GE Building, and Citigroup Center. Manhattan is connected to the other boroughs by a series of bridges and tunnels. The most famous bridge may be the Brooklyn Bridge because of its brick arches. The New York City subway, a massive mass transit system that mostly runs underground, also connects the island to the rest of the boroughs. Manhattan, like the other boroughs, has many different neighborhoods, many of which are named for the ethnic communities that first lived there. Some of these neighborhoods include Little Italy, Little Germany, Little Brazil, Chinatown, and Koreatown. One of the most famous parts of Manhattan is Times Square. Times Square is called the crossroads of the world. Every year, millions of people gather there on New Year's Eve to watch an illuminated crystal ball drop. There are many theaters around Times Square. Most of these theaters are on Broadway, a famous street considered the home of the American theater industry. Another famous Manhattan street is Fifth Avenue. A part of the avenue features expensive designer stores like Tiffany's. Fifth Avenue is also famous for its Museum Mile. For many years, gambling in the United States was legal only in the state of Nevada. Nevada is a western state that is east of California, south of Oregon and Idaho, west of Utah, and north of Arizona. It is a desert state where little rain falls during the year. It's a little more than 275 miles from the city of Los Angeles, which is where most of its visitors come from. Driving from Los Angeles is about 4 hours. Las Vegas, which means the meadows in Spanish, was established by the Mexicans in the mid-1800s. Much of what is now the southwestern part of the United States was then part of the Mexican Empire. The city was a railroad town established in 1905, and the first legal casino appeared in 1931. Las Vegas is now a gambling town where people from all over the United States come to vacation. Its population is under 2 million, making it the 30th largest city in the country. Its original population in 1905 was only 5,000. Much of the city's growth is due to the gambling industry. Many states have since legalized gambling, including New Jersey and California, but Las Vegas remains the #1 tourist city for gamblers in the U.S. Today, some of its largest and most beautiful hotels include Bellagio, Flamingo, Caesar's Palace, Treasure Island, Mandalay Bay, and Wynn. These hotels are on Las Vegas Boulevard, which is commonly called the Strip. With its nearly year-round sunshine, beautiful casinos, and variety of gaming options, Las Vegas remains the best location for gambling in the U.S. On December 7, 1941, the United States of America was attacked by the Imperial Japanese Navy at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. The surprise attack was intended to destroy the American Pacific Fleet that stood in the way of Japan's complete domination of the Pacific Ocean during the 1940s. The attack was coordinated with attacks in the Philippines, Malaysia, Singapore, and Hong Kong. Pearl Harbor was attacked by more than 350 Japanese airplane fighters, bombers, and torpedo planes that were launched from 6 aircraft carriers. The early morning attack sank 4 U.S. battleships, and 4 more were heavily damaged. 6 of the 8 battleships were restored and returned to service, but the Japanese also destroyed or damaged 3 cruisers, 3 destroyers, a mine layer, and an anti-aircraft training ship. In addition, 188 U.S. aircraft were destroyed, with many of them on the ground. The attack was devastating. It took the U.S. years to recover from all the damage caused on that fateful morning. However, the Japanese were unable to destroy their main targets, the Navy's aircraft carriers. By what some call a stroke of luck, the U.S. carrier fleet was out to sea at the time of the attack. The country was in shock at the news of the disaster. U.S. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt called the attack cowardly and declared December 7th as a day that will live in infamy. On December 8th, the United States formally declared war on Japan. This plummeted the country into World War II, which Roosevelt had long hoped to avoid. Soon after the United States' declaration of war against Japan, Germany, which was a Japanese ally, declared war on the U.S., and the country was now fully involved in the greatest war in the history of the world. One of the darkest days in American history was September 11, 2001. This is a day that will live in infamy for most Americans. It was the most tragic day in the history of the country since December 7, 1941, when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. September 11th was the day Muslim extremists hijacked 4 commercial airliners in an attempt to destroy the American spirit by slamming those jets into 4 buildings. 3 of the 4 jets reached their targets, while one was stopped by a group of everyday heroes who gave their lives for their country. In the early morning hours on September 11, 2001, American Airlines Flight 11 slammed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center in New York City. A few minutes later, Flight 175, also an American Airlines flight, struck the South Tower. Both suicide attacks brought the towers down, but not immediately. It took time for the extreme heat from the burning jet fuel to weaken the towers to their eventual collapse. At about the same time, American Airlines Flight 77 crashed into the Pentagon, which is a government building in the country's capital, Washington, D.C. The 4th flight, United Airlines Flight 93, was also headed for the capital city. Most people think its target was either the Capitol building or the White House, the president's home. A group of brave passengers, upon hearing the news of what was happening in the country, decided to take down the giant airplane, even though they knew they would not survive. They stormed the cockpit and took the controls from the hijackers. The plane flew out of control, crashing into a field in the state of Pennsylvania, where all passengers were killed. In all, about 3,000 Americans lost their lives on that day, but the American spirit was not suppressed. Those responsible for the attacks were quickly dealt with, and the country soon began its journey to recovery. September 11, 2001, a day America will never forget. One of the most beautiful and recognizable California landmarks is the Golden Gate Bridge in the city of San Francisco. The bridge spans the San Francisco Bay and is part of a network of 5 main bridges that cross the bay in the San Francisco and Oakland area. The region with its bay has one of the most breathtaking views in the world, and part of which is the historic Golden Gate Bridge. It is perhaps the most iconic and recognizable landmark in the entire United States. Construction on the bridge began in 1933, while the country was deeply mired in the Great Depression. Many people think the bridge was, in large part, responsible for the country's economic recovery because of the number of workers employed. The material used to build the bridge also contributed to the manufacturing, distribution, and transportation. The bridge connects San Francisco to the San Francisco Peninsula in Marin County through both California State Route 1 and U.S. Route 101. Before the bridge was built, the only way to get from one location to the other was to go around the bay or to take a ferry across. Construction of the bridge was controversial at the time. Many thought the project was simply too complex, expensive, and dangerous to build. The construction plan approved concentrated on safety for the workers who would be involved in the construction, and it worked well until February 17, 1937. Remarkably, only one worker had died up to that date, but on that date, a scaffolding collapsed, killing 10 men in the tragic accident. The bridge was completed later that year and has been in use ever since. It is one of California's great landmarks, with people from all over the world drawn to see it. One of the most historic and significant landmarks in the United States is the San Francisco cable car system. It is the world's only manually operated cable car system. It is run by the San Francisco Municipal Transportation Agency. The system dates back to 1878, when the California Street Line first opened. In all, there are 3 lines currently operating in the city and boasts a fleet of 12 cable cars. There used to be 23 lines in use throughout the city, connecting the diverse communities that make up San Francisco. The open-air cars are a major tourist attraction and are still used by San Francisco commuters on a daily basis. The simple reason cable cars were first used in the city was because of its landscape. San Francisco is very hilly, which makes it impossible for municipal buses to scale. The solution for this problem was the cable car. These cars are literally pulled by cable up and down the steep hills of the city, making it easier for people to get from one end of the city to the other. There are two types of cars in use today: single-ended cars and double-ended cars. The single-ended cars have open-sided sections with seats that face outward to the street. The rear section of these cars is enclosed with seats facing the interior of the car. These cars seat 29 passengers. They travel in both directions by using a swivel-based turntable that turns the car at the end of the line. The double-ended cars are a bit larger and can hold up to 68 passengers. It has 34 seats and grips for an additional 34 standing passengers. The best feature of these cars is the pure fun they are to ride. People who ride the San Francisco cable cars are stepping into part of California's history. On one of New York City's most famous avenues, Fifth Avenue, is Museum Mile. Museum Mile is a 23-block stretch that holds some of the most famous museums in the world. Museum Mile begins at 85th Street and Fifth Avenue with the massive Metropolitan Museum of Art. Inside is thousands of years' worth of art and artifacts. A visitor can visit an entire Egyptian tomb, sit in a Japanese-style garden, view Renaissance paintings and ancient Greek and Roman sculptures. There is even a gallery featuring musical instruments. In the summer, there is a rooftop garden where there are spectacular views of the city, especially of Central Park. The Guggenheim on 88th Street and Fifth Avenue looks a little bit like a snail's shell from the outside. When it opened in the 1950s, the swirling architecture, designed by Frank Lloyd Wright, was thought to be ugly by many. This museum focuses on modern art, but sometimes features special exhibits like one they had a few years ago of ancient Mexican ruins. The National Academy Museum and School of Fine Arts on 91st Street and Fifth Avenue is the city's oldest art school, dating back to 1825. The Jewish Museum on 93rd Street and Fifth Avenue tells 4,000 years' worth of Jewish history. Up 10 blocks on 103rd Street and Fifth Avenue is the Museum of the City of New York, showcasing the history of the Big Apple from its colonial start. 1 block up on 104th Street and Fifth Avenue is El Museo del Barrio. This museum started as a space to reflect the city's large Puerto Rican migrant community. Now it features exhibits focusing on art from all over Latin America. Across the avenue is the Central Park Conservatory Garden with a fountain that has a sculpture of 3 dancing life-size women. The Empire State Building may be the most famous building in New York City. It is called the Empire State Building because New York State is called the Empire State. It is 454 feet tall. Many people think it is the tallest building in the world. This was true when it was built in 1931. In 1970, when the World Trade Center was built, that became the tallest building. Now, the Empire State Building is the 4th tallest building in the U.S. and the 23rd tallest in the world. Inside the building is mostly occupied by offices and stores. People can go to the top of the building, where there is an observation deck. From the top, there are beautiful views of New York City, especially at night. Most people take one of 73 elevators to the top. It takes less than 1 minute by elevator to get to the 80th floor. That is where there is a gift shop. Some people walk 1,860 steps to the top. Every year, there is even a race, with people competing to see who can walk up to the top the fastest. The landmark is not just famous because of its height. In 1945, a small plane crashed into it. More than 30 people have tried to kill themselves by jumping off the building. In 1933, it was featured in the movie King Kong, where a giant gorilla climbs to the top and falls to his death after being attacked by airplanes. The building was also in the movie Sleepless in Seattle with Tom Hanks. At night, the top of the Empire State Building is lit up in different colors. It is red and green on Christmas, red for Lunar New Year, and blue for Hanukkah. On the 4th of July, it is red, white, and blue.